include that. Okay, so this gradient form, which is really great, I can again click and drag with my gradient tool to be able to create some of my forms here. One of the features that's really great about this is that you can change the opacity of your colors. And I haven't jumped into showing the color yet because I wanted to sort of get to this place where we can talk about the different forms of the gradient. Again, our influence here is Orlando Arocene is sort of showing this beautiful method of creating wonderful gradient and shapes and things. So here, if you click on the color nodes in your gradient panel, it'll give you the feature to choose the opacity. What's nice about this is if I choose even the same color on the same gradient, I can get it to slowly fade out into itself. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's say I wanted this to have a little bit of like a yellow amber light to it. So I'm going to go ahead and change my white into a different color. All I have to do is double click on that to get my color options to pop up. So double clicking on the color sphere there in your gradient panel will give me some options. I can go to like the color feature itself. I can go to these color swatches, or I can eyedrop a color if I want to. I'm going to double click again. Under the color feature here, I don't want it to be just black and white. So I'm going to change that with this little menu button in the corner, and we'll choose RGB. Now I can have these sliders when I want to add in a little bit of lighter color. And like I said, I want to try and do something that's just like a subtle yellow, just a little ambering, a little bit, little yellow color there. So what I want to also do is have my darker shadowed color be a similar color of the yellow, but maybe a little bit faded version of it. So I'll just use the eyedropper color to pick up the same, about the same color. So it doesn't look like there's any gradient there, right? It's just sort of this flat feature of the two. But if I make the first one where I want the highlight to be 0% opacity right here in my setting, it will look like it's this sort of faded light. And look at that cool sphere. So sort of just like a faded version of just a little bit of light on that edge. What's cool about this is even if I put this radial gradient into like a rectangle, let's say, I'll just make a rectangle, and I have my gradient tool, I can click and drag and just sort of create this spherical shape or whatever. And it's pushing the color. Let me use maybe a darker color than yellow. Let me go back in here and I'll change this to like maybe a little pink or something will be a little bit easier to see. It's going to fade essentially from yellow to pink. And now I have this really kind of beautiful half-cropped rectangle square that if I layer them on top of each other are going to blend really nicely together. So this is the method that he can use to create these kind of interesting shapes or forms that seem like they just sort of fade together with color, which is pretty cool. So a little bit of an advanced feature with gradient, if you want to get into that. Play around with it, have some fun with it. Hope that made sense, by the way. Let me know if there's any questions if you want me to go over some of that again. Happy to do that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and check out our sort of next feature, which is the last of the gradient tools, which is the freeform gradient. This one's really fun to do. Like I said, it may slow your computer down a little bit. What it does when you click on that one is it gives you these little points on top of your shape, whatever your shape is. To interact with the points, you can actually just literally click and drag to move that color around where you want it to be on your shape. And then it will reform the gradient based on where you move it to. And I can tell already that this is starting to sort of slow down my computer a little bit. So if I want to change this color, all I need to do is double click on it. Just kidding. Man, there it goes. I can choose, you know, color palette. Again, if I don't want black and white, go to the RGB color space with that little sub menu. And then I can just kind of pull my sliders around or click on the hue of whatever hue I want, which is pretty cool. And create some really just nice forms with this. I'm just going to do some fun blues because, you know, maybe it's like a little sky reference. It would do like little sunset colors or something, or sunrise colors. Subtle yellow and blue together. This is a really awesome tool because you can really, even if you like pinch these little nodes together, they'll create some really beautiful transitions of space, which looks pretty great. So highly recommend playing around with that one if you haven't before. Essentially, it sort of is potentially easier to use, a little bit less complicated maybe than the radial design one that I just showed you. Essentially just make sure you have that gradient feature option turned on, and then you can interact with those nodes, which is pretty fun. So here it's telling me, hey, do you want to edit this gradient and gradient? I do. I'm going to click edit gradient. It takes me back to the space where I can edit those points. You can also hover over anywhere to add another one. So let's say I wanted, a little bit more of like a green down here. So I could click, add another point, double click on that to get to the color space, change the color to whatever I want, and then interact with it in that way. Kind of cool. Any questions at all about the gradient features that we've just gone over? Then you can click on them and hit delete if you don't want them. Cool. That's pretty much all that I wanted to go over for today with the effects of gradients. What I'm going to probably do is go ahead and stop recording there. No problem at all. Okay, so quick little demo on how to export things from Illustrator. So I have multiple artboards in my document here. So let me just zoom out so we can see that there are several in here. They're sort of spaced out because of the crop boxes that I have in there to sort of make it so I can see just what's going to be on my poster. Let's say this is the one that I wanted to export into Photoshop. To be able to do that the best way, or a way, there's a couple different ways that this could be done. A way to do it is to just go into the File and Export feature and then choose Export for Screens. It isn't that you can't get stuff that's exported for print this way, it's just that's the name of the menu. So go to Export for Screens. Here you can see all of my artboards. One thing I didn't do before is this is the one I wanted to export, but let's give it a name, right? So the name of the file is actually right here on the text underneath where that artboard shows up. I'm going to give it a name. In this case, this will be my, contemporary Austin poster design. We'll say version 1.3. You can choose the format that you want to save it to. If you're ever needing to export something as like a PDF, there's a PDF option. PNG is a file format that's going to give you a transparent background. So anything that is no shape, flat white background, sort of just paper, is going to be semi-transparent or totally transparent. You can then also save these things as JPEG 100s or JPEG 80s to 20. What the numbers mean is lower quality. So if you don't want to lose any quality, set it up to JPEG 100. The advantage of lowering your quality potentially is that it will make the file size smaller. So, the more detail you have, the bigger the file size, that sort of thing. I'm not too worried about file size. If honestly files in Illustrator that you export for JPEGs that are just shapes or just type and don't have a ton of effects and things applied to them are not very big files. So you don't really have to worry about that too much. So I'll go ahead and hit on the JPEG 100 because that's what I save it as. I did also just show you a couple minutes ago this nice feature where you can increase the size of your file. The reason that's nice is everything is infinitely scalable in Illustrator because it's just a vector system. When you start throwing stuff into Photoshop, you can't do the same thing, right? It's going to have a limit to how much quality it has. And so maybe just to compare and contrast, let me go ahead and do a 4x on this so we can see how much more detail we get out of that if it's at such a larger scale. And then this folder icon will let you choose where you save it to. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Just put it right into my typography folder. Go ahead and hit choose. And this is the one artboard that I have checkmarked. So it's just going to export this one. And I'll go ahead and hit export artboard. Takes me to it. It's in this folder. This was the first one. That was the 2x. And what did I call it? Contemporary Austin poster design. There's the 4x. Now to get this into Photoshop, the fastest way to get it into its native size in Photoshop is to just click and drag that file and drop it right on the Photoshop icon. And let's see if the quality difference is any better. And I should see here that even if I zoom in really, really close, let's see if I can get to a similar zoom level on that small extra type there. This one is probably going to be, yep, you guys see it's starting to pixelate a little bit on that one versus this one that is a little bit more crisp. So that was the 4x one, just giving you a little bit more crisp version of the type than this version that is a 2x. So in Photoshop, for sure, for details, it helps to have just a little bit more there. Okay, cool. That is exporting from Illustrator and moving it to Photoshop. I'll go ahead and pause my recording.